Every trial, how it started was the officer stood at a tape line next to a cone. And then I actually stood at random, different distances, to ultimately see if they could discharge 2 shots before I got to them. We were actually working on a little bit of a literature review for police-related traffic stops. And we were working on it to help officers realize the importance of going to the passenger side during any traffic stop. And while I was putting that paper together, I came across this aspect of training for police I never heard of. It was called the 21-foot principle. This was just done actually in Salt Lake City with Dennis Tueller. And all he did was he just grabbed a bunch of guys from the police force and said, hey, draw your weapon. How long does it take on average? He determined 1.5 seconds. Then he said, well, how far can someone run in 1.5 seconds? They determined 21 feet. Again, just by pulling people from the force. And he ended up publishing it in SWAT magazine. That's kind of how it started, and now it's known nationwide, worldwide, as this training approach to knifed individuals at a 21-foot distance. And this thing has been trained for 40 years and has been updated in 40 years. And I felt, what is something that we can do maybe in this lab to update that? We wanted to measure the quality of the gun draw, and how we did that was we affixed them with 15 motion sensors called opals. They look kind of like your smart watch, and they go basically measuring every major joint in your body. And basically what we're able to see from that is we're able to collect where your joint is at any given notice. We're able to see all that at about 128 data points per second. So it's very, very accurate. If we can dial in on the most efficient motor response given the distance that an individual is charging at, we can provide really, really good recommendations for officers when they are faced with a knife individual at different distances. And what we see here is this individual, this is their elbow, and what we're seeing is this is their hand just fully extended right by the side of their body. And this is them actually reaching for their weapon right here. This little divot here, this is them drawing their weapon out of their holster. So at this point right here, the gun is pulled all the way out of the officer's holster. And then this line right here is them actually extending their elbow to fire. At the shorter distances, 10 feet, 15 feet, unless you are a very, very skilled firearm draw individual, the distance is too close for your average officer to draw their weapon and discharge twice before taking the knife object in some way, shape, or form. What we're kind of seeing as an interesting change to their gun draw at those shorter distances is instead of drawing their weapon and extending fully out, they're actually drawing their weapon and either bringing it and shooting from the hip or shooting from the chest, or even just slightly extending their elbows, because at 10 feet and 15 feet, you have less than really a second to recognize a threat and determine, okay, I need to draw my weapon, and you are gonna have to physically draw your weapon and discharge twice. So at those shorter distances, 15 feet or less, officers really should either A, be really skilled in their firearm draw, or B, demonstrate some adjustment in their firearm draw to accommodate those shorter distances. However, as distances got further, 21 feet and 30 feet, we really saw that majority of the officers, if they didn't make a mistake on their firearm draw, they were mostly able to execute their gun draw and discharge twice. Now, we had newer officers and more experienced officers, and as you can imagine, with a wide array of experience, we saw a wide array of gun draw performances. And some individuals, even at 21 feet, it was cutting it extremely close, or so close they were only maybe able to get one shot off. And again, one of the things that the officers can do in those situations is utilize one of those defensive tactics that we looked at, whether it's a backpedal or moving offline, because that in turn creates more distance for the officer to draw their weapon and return fire. And then it also makes the person charging at them now react to the moving officer, because at the start of the trial, the officer was having to respond to the charging individual. And now when we flip the scripts, they can basically put the challenge of reaction onto the individual at any of the distances. If you can move offline or somehow make them react to you, you now are gaining 0.2 of a second, because that's how long it takes for someone to respond to a visual stimulus. And then if you're moving offline, they're gonna have to change directions. Well, that can take anywhere from a half a second to a second, depending on how much movement the officer is doing. It's making the assailant now react to the officer, and it puts the officer back in control. And the reason why we want to put the officer in control, and basically the whole reason why we're doing this study, is to save lives.